Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us for today's webinar. I'm Drew Webb with the Alumni Association, and today's webinar is one of several webinars we have produced this semester. You can view our previous webinars from this fall, as well as about 20 others, by visiting our alumni website, vuconnect.com/career. And while you're there, make sure to check out our other career resources, including the Career Advisor database, where you can search through over 8,000 alumni who have volunteered to help with career-related advice. Today's webinar will last around 45 minutes. Please feel free to type questions into the question box as you have them, and we will make sure that these get addressed before today's time is up. We are recording the presentation and will send you a link to the recording later this week. Our presenter today, Dr. Brian Griffith, is a professor, author, and former director of the Human and Organizational Development Program here at Vanderbilt. He taught many of the core courses in the program, which earned him a number of teaching awards. His research focuses on how 360-degree assessments can be used as a catalyst for change within organizations. His consulting company, G360 Surveys, has created an online software platform that not only gives meaningful 360-degree feedback to leaders and teams, but also includes training resources to help facilitate development. Brian, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It is my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. Well, folks, I see there's a number of you out there. I'm always curious to know how many of you have had me in class, so feel free to type a message in the chat window. I'm thrilled to reconnect with some of you who have had me in the past. I'm always excited to be a part of your development and your ongoing personal growth. So I've been at Vanderbilt for 20 years now. This is my 20th year. I've taught many courses around human development and team dynamics, written a couple books on teams. And what I've come to learn in my career is that much of our growth comes in the form of feedback. So I've designed a set of tools to allow that feedback to take place. Just a little bit of background. If you've taken any of my classes, you may have taken the one called Small Group Behavior, in which we look at how teams work and how people lead teams. And over the course of teaching that course for 20 years, every spring, I have students work in teams to tackle a project on campus, to try to identify a problem and implement a solution that addresses that problem. And over the course of this semester, students do a lot of work together and are crunching the night before big deadlines when it's Red Bull and sushi time. They're getting their presentation done and prepared, and sometimes under pressure the very best of human nature comes out, and sometimes under pressure the very worst of human nature comes out. And I think both of those cases offer a learning opportunity. So I would have students write 20-page papers. Some of you might have been on the receiving end of those assignments, and bring their papers back to turn them in. I grade them. I turn them back to the students, and I'd ask them in their papers to analyze themselves and to analyze their team's functioning as well. And the insights were just really stunning, because what I see in the classroom is very limited about compared to what actually goes on in the teams, especially under stressful deadlines. So I would ask students to share with each other, put them in their teams, and to share with each other what they wrote about, their impressions of each other, their frustrations with each other. And if you were in any of those discussions, you know the outcome, and that is that it's hard to give direct feedback, especially in that setting when you're in fraternities and sororities together, you're going to lunch together after class. It's too risky. So I designed an online system that does that anonymously, and I'll just share a little bit about that momentarily. So let me launch in. My philosophy and my opening assumption is that we get better at most things in life through doing something and evaluating the results. Now, if there are any golfers out there, you get immediate feedback when you've hit a golf shot. You know how the shot went. And there's a number of metrics that you can use to determine if you achieved your goal. The goal usually being keeping the ball straight in the fairway, getting it close to the pin that you're shooting at, or the flag. You can feel the way your body feels, see where the ball goes. You can use your hearing to determine if you hit the shot well, because a well-hit ball has a certain sound to it. The vibration up the shaft of the club will tell you if you've hit it well, if you've hit it right in the sweet spot of the club, because you hardly feel anything, as opposed to hitting it off-center, either at the toe of the club or the heel of the club. You feel pretty intense vibration coming up the shaft into your arms. So there's lots of ways we can determine whether or not we've achieved our goal, in this case, hitting a good golf shot. Well, unfortunately, in many things in life, we don't get immediate feedback about how well we're doing. Now, imagine, if you will, the situation of a person singing with earbuds in. Now, you might have been one of these folks and told how you sound, but what's happening is, because the earbuds are covering a person's ears, they're not hearing how well they sound. And as a result, singing boldly with earbuds in often leads to louder than normal singing, and it often leads to out of pitch or out of tune, off-tune sound, as opposed to, for example, playing a guitar where you strum the chord and you know exactly if you've hit the chord right. Singing with earbuds can get us all into trouble. Well, the reality is, in many areas of our lives, we're just not very good judges of our own performance. We don't know how we're doing. We're not collecting data. We're not. It's hard to get data. We might have blind spots. We just don't know ourselves very well. Some of us overestimate our strengths, and some of us underestimate our strengths. Some of us are very well aware of our weaknesses. Some of us are a bit naive or blinded to our weaknesses. And in many of the very important things in life, like being a good manager, being a good friend, being a good romantic partner, being a good parent, we don't get a lot of immediate feedback. And again, the reality is we just don't know ourselves very well. This really came home to me a couple years ago when the medical school asked me to put together a physician leadership assessment. And they said physicians just don't know themselves very well, especially how they come across to others. Their emotional intelligence and interpersonal awareness is quite low. And I said, well, surely these are smart people. They know how they come across to others. And as I looked at the research, the medical educators and deans were correct. They don't know themselves very well. They don't know how they come across to patients and or colleagues. But you know what? That's the same for most of us. We don't know how we come across to others. In many cases, we need an outside perspective. We need someone to kind of observe us, or somebody that knows us, works with us, lives with us, who can give us some honest feedback. Now, it's out of this set of assumptions that the whole field of 360-degree assessments has emerged. And many of you in your careers have been, I'm sure, exposed to 360 assessments. Many leaders or rising leaders, high potential employees are put through a training process that often includes a 360 assessment. 360-degree feedback comes from multiple sources. You get some from people that work above you, above your rank, supervisors, people that work horizontal to you, your peers, are at the same level as you are, people that report to you, direct reports, and then of course we can also get feedback from customers or other people in the organization that don't really report to us, or that I don't really report to, but are kind of internal customers, or we can even use external customers. And because of this feedback from all these different perspectives, we really get a sense of how we're performing in our jobs. Well, let me make this offer first in case we lose anybody over the course of this webinar. But my consulting company, G360 Talent Development, I've for the last 5 years developed and used 360 assessments for many different professions, attorneys, doctors, nurses, community leaders. My standard assessments are for managers and for emerging leaders, or people that are early in their career and are more of an individual contributor now, or just recently promoted into management, and they'll get some feedback on how well they're doing. Because again, think back to singing with earbuds. In many cases, you might get some feedback from your boss, but we rarely get good, hard, honest feedback that we can use to improve our careers, our leadership skills. So if you go to g360talent.com and /free survey, I would love for you to take the assessment. Well, first of all, I'd love for you to give me some feedback on it, but I'd love for you to get some feedback yourself from the people, and you choose the people that evaluate you. They could be peers or colleagues. They could be direct reports if you have people that report to you. It could be your boss or bosses. I guarantee you, you will learn something about yourself that you may not have known clearly. So that's my offer. Would love to work with you. So just go there, sign up for it, and basically launches in about 1 or 2 days. You choose the people you want to evaluate you. We stay open for about 3 weeks to give them time to do that. And then you get a report that gives you the feedback in a format that's easy to understand, with development resources, including videos from yours truly, to help you improve in that area. Okay, I'll put this slide up again at the end of the webinar. Well, first, let's look at a case study. Let's look at Google, especially in this area of 360 feedback, or feedback for managers to improve their performance. Of course, as you know, Google was founded by Sergey Brin and Larry Page in 1998, so they're coming up to their 20-year anniversary. It's raised $26 million within a year, moved into their Googleplex headquarters in late '99. They were profitable by 2001, 3 years into their existence. Of course, what they figured out how to do is, in the whole emerging field of search engines, they figured the best way to identify highly desirable and quality companies that you might be searching for is to figure out how many other companies are pointing to them, or how many other companies have links in their website that point to the company that you might be interested in. And they launched their web crawlers and web bots and web spiders to identify those companies who have the most other companies pointing to their website. And that became the formula for their success. And that became a quick way to generate lots of money, which they continue to do. In 2002, their 4th year, they made $100 million. Now, at that time, they only had a few hundred engineers reporting to 4 managers. They hired heavily from Stanford School of Engineering, and they had initially a pretty low view of management. They thought if you hire highly motivated, smart people, they don't need somebody watching over them or managing them. Well, they quickly realized that you do need structure in a company, and some people did better than other people as managers. So as a data-driven company, they looked at their top-performing managers and their lowest-performing managers to find out, well, what is the difference? Why do some managers do better than others? Let's look at the data. And what they found in terms of outcomes, thinking about your good golf swing, you have to identify what the metrics are to determine whether or not you've hit a good shot. Well, their metrics in terms of determining who's a good manager is that the top performing managers had team members who were happier employees, a more productive employee. It also leads to lower turnover. And in general, they just were higher performing in terms of meeting their team's objectives, meeting deadlines, and so forth, compared to the bottom 25% of managers. Okay, so they realized that, well, maybe we had a short-sighted view of management. Maybe managers are needed. Of course, when you've got 10,000 employees, and early on, Larry Page was still getting emails about the health insurance package. He realized we need layers of management, of course. And then they determined, well, what do the best managers look like? So by collecting the data on comparing the top performing managers from the bottom performing managers, they came up with 8 qualities of a great manager. Things like being a good coach, not micromanaging. You can understand why number 2 is important. Smart, talented people don't like to be micromanaged. The more soft skills, like number 3, expressing interest and concern for team members. Number 4, get stuff done. Number 5, being a good communicator, which means not just sharing ideas or information, but also being a good listener. Helping team members with career development, have a clear vision and strategy for the team, and then of course you need to know what you're doing in terms of technical skills. Okay, so Google has gone through this process of we hired people, we're making some money, we realize we need some layers of management, try to figure out, do managers really matter? Yes, they do. Better performing managers have better performing teams. Okay, well, what are some of those things that those better performing managers do to get better results? They come up with these 8 qualities of a great manager. And now the next logical step in this evolution, this is actually called Project Oxygen. You can Google it. It's this evolution of coming up with a system of identifying what good managers look like and then measuring it. You know, for golf, you have a golf score that measures your performance. For Google, managers, this is a voluntary process, but almost everybody does it. They do a 360-degree assessment. Actually, it's a 180 assessment. They are strongly encouraged, every manager at Google, to do this upward feedback survey twice a year. You can look at the article that this comes from, called How Google Sold Its Engineers on Management, which is a Harvard article. But basically, twice a year, managers are asked, I think it's 8 questions, they're measured on those 8 qualities of a good manager. There's 2 questions for each of those 8 competencies or qualities, and they get feedback from their team on how well they're doing on their 8 qualities, and they give each manager a percentage favorable rating on each of those 8 qualities. So people are answering questions on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree, 2 being disagree, 3 being neutral, 4 being agree, 5 being strongly agree. And basically 4s and 5s are considered favorable scores. So managers twice a year get a percentage on how favorable they are in each of those 8 qualities. And these are, again, some of them hard skills, many of them soft skills, like my manager shows consideration for me as a person. It's pretty important. And then at the end of these 16 Likert scale questions, there's some open-ended questions such as what would you recommend your manager keep doing, what would you have your manager change? So sort of like what do you like them that they do, and what do you wish they would do differently? By the way, it reminds me a little bit, if I could share a personal story. Early in my career as a professor, I would be eager to receive my course evaluations, which would be similar to what you see on the screen here. You all remember when at the end of a course you answered some Likert scale questions on a scale of 1 to 5 on some various measures, and then you had some open-ended prompts. What you like best about this class, and what was the worst thing about this class? And as a young, eager professor, not knowing if I was any good at this, it's probably back in year 2000, 2 years into my tenure, I would eagerly wait for the course evaluations to come back after the grades were submitted. And I remember one year early on, I got to that first open-ended question, which was similar to this one. What was the best thing about this course? And somebody said, Brian Griffith. Me. Somebody thought I was the best thing about that course. It was amazing. It was affirming. This was my calling, my raison d'etre, my purpose in life, to teach, shape young minds who are eager to grow, enthusiastic about their futures. Until I got to the next question. In our version at Vanderbilt, what was the worst thing about this class? Now I assume it was a different person, but the answer, unfortunately, was the same. The worst thing about this class was Brian Griffith. Ugh, it was brutal. It hurt so bad. But I tell you, I learned to take those course evaluations very seriously to improve every semester and to improve my classes. It's my fundamental belief in how we get better at anything, from playing the guitar to playing golf to being a better friend to being a better romantic partner to being a better father. Well, the research confirms that conclusion, and we know from various sources that peer feedback, especially people that work with us, especially on a team environment, that's where I've done most of my research, written a couple books on teams. Peer feedback, regular feedback, leads to higher team performance, more positive attitudes about team experiences, and greater levels of personal development. Peer feedback also leads to increased self-awareness and an internalized set of leadership standards and ideals. If you're getting regular feedback on how people are perceiving you, you start to now focus on those areas and improve in those areas. Now, taking it back to the metaphor of golf, one of the ways my golf game really improves is when I keep a golf log. And you'll see this with professionals out on the golf course. After every shot, they're writing stuff down, or certainly after every hole. They're writing stuff down in this little book that they pull out of their back pockets. And that is to keep track of how many putts you made, where your drive off the tee went, how many shots it took you to get to the green. And if you break down your game and really analyze each piece, you become much more aware of the pieces that you need to work on. Same way with 360 feedback. If you're getting regular feedback or regular peer feedback, you start to identify the areas of your game, so to speak, that you need to work on. But here's the reality. Giving and receiving feedback is not so easy. Certainly not easy to give feedback, honestly, because often we hold things in and they build and build and build, and then all of a sudden, because many of us are conflict averse, and then it's reached a boiling point and it comes spewing out in the most undelicate of ways. So giving feedback's not easy. Receiving it's not easy as well. Here's some possible reactions to feedback. I mean, the two big reactions are anger. We get angry if your primary emotion is to respond with anger. You're going to get angry. You get, and then another big, response to this kind of feedback, critical feedback, is sadness or disappointment. And more specifically, we become defensive. We deny it. No, that wasn't my fault. I don't know. We plan to retaliate. We hold grudges. We blame others. But sometimes we have the wherewithal to acknowledge mistakes. To approach some critical feedback with, okay, this isn't the outcome I was looking for, but what can I learn from this? We can ask for additional input, see it as a catalyst for change, and then ultimately, this is a good kind of initial response, just to say thank you very much. I'll take that under consideration whenever we get critical feedback. And sometimes it takes a process of working through the feedback before we're ready to really learn from it. Now, if you want a good challenge along these lines, go to the person that knows you the best. It might be your sweetheart or best friend, and say, hey, I'd like to hear what you think my blind spots are. What do you think I need to work on to be a better person? Hold on, because you might hear something you might not like. And here, the reason we can have strong reactions to this kind of feedback is because we perceive it as a threat. A physical threat. If you're driving down the highway and all of a sudden you're reading a text and you look up and the cars in front of you have stopped, your adrenaline kicks in, your nervous system responds with lightning speed to avoid that threat. The threat being a car that stopped in front of you, potentially crashing into it. A psychological threat is when whatever we lean upon to make ourselves feel worthy and successful and desirable, if that's threatened, then we react strongly with a fight or flight response. Or if I place all my value in my looks, for example, or my athletic performance, or my career, whenever that's threatened, it's perceived as a psychological threat. The amygdala is activated, and we have these very strong reactions. Or socially, if we feel like somebody is rejecting us or manipulating us or trying to control us, again, we can have a very strong reaction to that feedback. But the challenge is to take the feedback without having that kind of a strong negative reaction. And one of the models that I really like about this is called the growth mindset. The book is there at the bottom. It's called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck of Stanford. And she says that we can take critical feedback in the right way if we detach our performance from our personal worth. So when I fail at work, it's not a measure of me as a human being. It means, okay, I need to figure this out and work at it. And if we can detach our performance from personal worth, then we can pursue challenges and learn from critical feedback. Because failure is seen as an opportunity to grow and learn. It's not, I am a failure. It's not a source of shame anymore. Of course, that's not easy to do. But once you are open to the feedback, it doesn't erode your sense of self and personal worth or personal self-esteem. You're able to hear the feedback and learn from it. So for me, taking it back to the golf metaphor, every year I go to my local little course in Franklin, Tennessee. You might remember Franklin, about 15, 20 miles south of Nashville. And I go to my golf coach, and she takes me out to the driving range, puts a couple balls on the tee box, and says, all right, hit away. And this is usually in March. It only takes 3 or 4 balls before she says, enough. I've seen enough. No mas. No more. She says, we got some work to do. And I'm not threatened by her. It's, my golf game is not a measure of my worth. She says, we need to work on your grip. Your alignment is off. We need to figure out how to do your backswing a little bit smoother. And at the end of a 30-minute coaching session, I'm hitting the ball so much better that it really, just to stay open to her feedback. And then she says, now I want you to go out in the next 3 weeks before our next coaching session, and I want you to take 3 times a week, take as many range balls as you need, go out to the driving range, and hit as many balls as necessary using your 8-iron club and shooting at the 120-yard flag hole. And I want you to keep doing it until 80% of your shots are falling within 20 yards of that hole, that green. So she's giving me feedback. I couldn't see it myself. There's 100 different variables in a good golf swing. She can see it. Sometimes she even puts me on a golf video analyzer, so frame by frame I can see what I'm doing wrong. I need that outside perspective to get better. Even world-class golfers have swing coaches and personal coaches. We need someone to watch us, and then we need to figure out a practice routine that addresses the areas that we need to work on. So that's exactly what I did. I developed an automatic 360-degree feedback system that gives people feedback, gives my students feedback in the 4 areas that are most important to career success, according to college recruiters. Having personal character, strong interpersonal skills, being able to solve problems, and then companies now want people that have leadership potential. We want to invest in people that can be the next generation of leaders at our company. So I've got about 8 assessments that I do. This one is for early career folks that don't have direct reports yet. It's taking these 4 categories that I just mentioned, and I've identified 4 competencies within each of these categories that has emerged from the research on what it takes to be a successful employee within companies. At an early career stage, and that's the emerging leader competencies, or at a more mid-range or later range area of your career. Same 4 quadrants, but managers who now have people reporting to them, just like the Google 8 qualities of a high-performing manager, I've identified 16 competencies grouped into these 4 major categories that are predictive of success for managers in most organizations. Things like integrity and work ethic, Things like problem analysis, being approachable, being able to motivate others, direct others, develop others as a coach. So if you so choose to participate in the free survey, or if you have the opportunity to get a 360 with the company that you're with, do it. You get reports that give you concrete feedback on what you need to work on to take your career to the next level, to be a better person. My assessments tend to be pretty holistic, but also to be a better employee. Now, in my assessments, you get compared to national norms. So you get to see how your scores compare to the tens of thousands of other people that have taken this assessment. It also includes development and training resources from yours truly to give you some guidance on how to improve in the areas that you're weak in, and it also includes a personal development planning sheet. Here's just a kind of a general overview of the feedback you get on my assessment. There's some 4 qualities related to personal character. You get rated by different rater groups that you define. When you identify people that you want to give you feedback, you put them in a category of either peer, supervisor, direct report if you have direct reports, and or customers. Compares your score with national percentiles. So down here gives you an explanation of the bar graph. High scores are defined as scores in the top 25%. So you'll be able to tell your level of dependability or work ethic compared to the people that evaluated you, or from the perspective of the people that evaluated you. Are you in the top 25% in the country? Or are you in the bottom 25%? Those would be low scores down here. Hidden strengths are where your self-assessment is a half a point higher than another rater group. Your self-assessment is a half a point lower than another rater group. A half a point is 1 standard deviation. That means you don't see your value in the way that other people see you. You get to see yourself through their eyes, and you get to realize, wow, people think I'm very motivating. People think I'm a great communicator. People think I have a lot of self-awareness. And then blind spots, this category right here, are where your self-assessment score is a half a point higher, 1 standard deviation, than another rater group. And that means you're thinking that you're doing pretty well in a certain area, and you're actually not. Now that is worth all that is a valuable piece of information to get, because you're doing something that's sabotaging your career that you don't know you're doing. And then you get specific comments from people about what they think your strengths and weaknesses are related to personal qualities, related to interpersonal skills, related to problem-solving skills, or related to your leadership skills. Each bullet is a different person's comments. Now, this is pretty helpful stuff. In the report, there's a page where you kind of process your feelings, ask some open-ended questions, and then I ask you to identify 2 goals that you want to work on as a result of the feedback. The very last page of the report, page 11, is a personal development planning worksheet. So what I've learned about personal development is you identify specific things you want to work on, you create an action plan right here with specific steps and deadlines. There's 2 goals and 2 sets of action plans. Then I suggest you should share these goals and action plans with at least 2 people. One of them should be your boss. So if you do this assessment, or if you do assessments like this, you get the feedback. Some of it's going to be critical, of course. The very last question I ask your raters is, what do you think John's strengths, weaknesses, and your suggestions for his improvement are? So you're going to get strengths, you're going to get weaknesses, and you're going to get some suggestions for what you need to work on. So I suggest you take this information, your personal development plan, and you fill it out. You don't have to show your boss the whole report, but you take this planning worksheet to him or her and you say, hey boss, I got some feedback that says I really need to work on my work ethic, or really need to work on my initiative. So here's my plan to do that. Would love to get your support and guidance to help me be a person with stronger integrity, for example. Now, what boss is not going to just love to hear that? You're showing initiative, you're showing that you need to work on something, you're asking for his or her help. And then at the very bottom, I suggest you identify 2 dates on your calendar to come back and look at your progress. Now this whole page is sort of like my golf coach saying, in the next 3 weeks I want you to come to the driving range 3 times a week, hit as many balls necessary so you can hit 80% of your shots within 20 yards of the pin. That's the plan for growth. That's what this sheet is. But as I mentioned, I don't kind of leave you on your own. Your company might offer some coaching. You can go to HR, get some feedback from HR on how to identify your strengths and weaknesses and how you can improve. Your company might offer classes. My company, many of you may have had Cherry Clark or Garnet Slatton. They're both managerial studies professors. We offer leadership academies that we do at different companies, but your company probably has something like that. Get online, or they might offer online courses that you can take. But if you click on any of the competencies in the report that I just showed you, you actually get taken to a web page where I give you a further definition of what that competency is, why it's important, some suggestions on how to improve in that area, a video. Who is that Hollywood celebrity? A video of me talking about how to improve in that area, 5 books to read, all linked to Amazon, 5 websites to visit, all to improve in that one area. In this case, it's communication. So let me go back. Now I also offer a team survey. If you want to do a team survey, you can let me know. This takes your team. You might be a leader or not. If you took HOD 1100 small group behavior, this is the survey that you did with your teams. Everybody gives everybody feedback. Everybody gets an individual report like I just showed you, but then everybody also gets a team report that measures the success of the team or the strengths of the team in these 4 areas that are associated with strong team performance, high-performing teams: shared vision, task management, communication, and a commitment to continuous improvement. There's a page of the report that looks like this. You also have the opportunity to identify your team's strengths, your team's weaknesses, and suggestions for improvement. Everybody on the team weighs in. So you get this report where you can put all the issues on the table and use this as a catalyst for kind of a team processing session. What do we need to do better as a team? You also get a collective group level analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of the team collectively on those 16 core competencies related to personal success. And then there's a team development plan at the end as well. Now, one thing you might consider doing is going to a coach or mentor and walk through the report with them. Ask them to give you some feedback on what the comments mean or what the scores mean. Help you to process your feelings about that, and then help you with the 2 areas to improve, and help you to create a specific action plan. Because sometimes, and this is why I embedded those development resources when you click on any of the competencies in the PDF of the report, sometimes we don't know how to improve. That's why it's kind of a blind spot. So as much as I try to provide that information in the reports, it's always helpful to go to somebody that knows you well and cares about you, cares about your development, and help you figure out how to practice, going to the driving range, how to improve in that area. And then finally, I just have a couple more slides before I'll open up for some Q&A. This is what I've learned about human development at my 20 years at Vanderbilt, and that is, first of all, you set some goals. What do I want to do? I want to get a PhD. I want to open my own company. I want to develop some assessments and hire some programmers to build this software platform. Whatever your goals are, set some reasonable goals, and then create a plan. You just got to get some feedback from others, work that plan diligently. It's all about commitment to your dream. And then you start the cycle all over again. Get some feedback. How am I doing? What's my progress like? And then readjust your goals, or readjust your plan, or re-up your commitment. This cycle is what works for us to become better employees, better human beings, better romantic partners, better parents, and so forth. Here's the company information again. The company is called G360 Talent Development. For your free 360 assessment, and you do either the manager assessment if you have direct reports, and I ask you to identify that on this little sign-up sheet. And then if you don't have direct reports, you do the Emerging Leader Survey. You can find out all about those at g360talent.com if you want to. But if you go to this website, you'll be able to sign up for your survey, your assessment. I'll launch it in the next 2 days, and then it'll stay open for 3 weeks. You'll get an initial email asking you to identify the names and email addresses of people that you want to evaluate you. The more the better. And you have to have at least 3 people give you some feedback within the categories for their scores to show up, because the email that's sent out to them automatically from the system says that their identity will be protected and averaged with other scores. So I recommend all of your bosses and managers, 6 to 10 of your peers, all of your direct reports. And that'll give you a full, well-rounded perspective on what you need to work on and help start you down the path of personal development that begins with a plan and working that plan. And that's it. So now I'll open up to any questions that anybody might have.
Great, Brian. Thank you so much for that presentation. We have one question that came in already. How long can my peers expect to spend completing the survey?
Oh, that's a great question. The surveys take about 5 minutes to answer the Likert scale questions. There's 48 questions, 3 questions for each of the 16 core competencies. And then it's up to them how much time they spend on the open-ended questions. They have 5 prompts. They're all optional. But in general, people will spend 10 to 15 minutes giving feedback. And it's all voluntary on their part, so they may or may not choose to participate.
Great. We'll see if some more questions come in here. Okay, here's a question. For someone embarking on their own business, what do you recommend the entrepreneur does to hit the ground running successfully in this area?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of VC firms, venture capital firms, will actually do an assessment of the leadership team, because that has been shown to be one of the best predictors of success of a new entrepreneurial endeavor. So get some people that you're working with and do the team assessment. That'll give you a lot of insight. Now, if you're just by yourself and you don't really have a team with you, get some feedback from former colleagues, employers, bosses, because as you launch off it on your own, the stakes are much higher, especially if you're working alone initially, because you don't get a lot of feedback at all on how well you're doing building this company. So I think it's even more important as you're getting started off to get some feedback from people outside of your organization, or if you have a leadership team, to do the team assessment so that they can identify what the issues are on the team early on before they blow up and get worse.
Okay, here's another one that came in. What advice do you have to give to other people feedback, especially if they are defensive or angry?
What advice do I have for people that are giving the feedback if they're angry at the other person? Does that sound right?
Well, yes, let's go with that.
Okay. Well, giving and receiving feedback is hard to do on either end. This is why little problems left unattended usually become bigger problems. Early intervention is the way to go. And giving feedback, if you're frustrated with the other person, it's important to give it when you're not frustrated. So cool off, cool down, sit down, have a dialogue with the other person, and try to communicate your feelings in an assertive way, but in a respectful way. When you do this, this is how it impacts me, and this is the request that I have for you. So when you do this, this is how it impacts me. Could you, and then give them a request for doing something differently. Now, if you're the one receiving feedback, you know, if your sweetheart says, honey, We need to talk. It strikes fear in the heart of every man that I know. How do you receive that? Well, you listen. You say, before you defend yourself, you use a lot of paraphrasing and probing, so you understand what the concerns are of the other person. So you put your feelings on hold for a minute, and you paraphrase, so you're upset with me. So you're frustrated that I'm doing this behavior. Tell me a little bit more about what makes you so upset about that. And then once they've really, they feel heard, they've gotten an opportunity to share their grievance or their frustration, then you say, would it be okay if I gave you my perspective on this? Or maybe you say, I can see that you're really upset. I'm going to really think about this. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Let's follow up with a conversation next week. So those would be, on both sides of the spectrum, giving and receiving feedback.
Great. Here's another one. In a small business with a small team, what are some strategies to introduce new hires and make them feel included and part of the team and avoid them feeling isolated or like an outsider?
Yeah, that's a great question. Issues around onboarding and adopting new people into an existing team. You may remember, if you took the class Small Group Behavior, or if your friends at Vanderbilt took Small Group Behavior, it's one of the foundational courses in HOD, that teams go through predictable stages. One model, which is easy to understand, is by Bruce Tuckman, that suggests teams go through forming, storming, norming, and performing before they're really at their peak. And that when new people come onto a team, teams tend to regress initially to try to absorb and encapsulate that new person. And one of the best ways to do that in a positive way is spending time. Doing something outside of work, having some downtime together. It's hard to, the issue is trust. Going back to Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of the team, the foundational and most important and most problematic dysfunction is trust. If you don't trust the people that you're working with or the people that are on your team, it's hard to move to more advanced levels of team development. So there's the best way to develop trust is just spending time with new people. So that's my bottom line piece of advice, and that is you got to spend time with you got to invite them out, you got to invite them to lunch, have team time that has a little bit of a kind of a social icebreaker, get to know you dimension of it. People have to share their stories, their history. That's basically how you incorporate or absorb a new person into the team.
Great. Well, that looks like all the questions that we have today. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you, Brian, for that wonderful and insightful presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we will be emailing everyone a recording of today's presentation and also include a brief evaluation, as the theme of today was feedback. We'd love to hear your feedback about today's presentation. And best of luck to everyone as you focus on your personal development. Have a great afternoon.
Good luck, folks. Thanks for sticking with me. Have a great day.